Welcome, everybody, to episode 1 of my podcast, Kira Gets Real Estate. Get it? Um, I am so glad you're here, and I'm excited to share lots of information with you. We're going to answer, of course, real estate questions. If you have anything, on your mind about buying or selling, or potentially buying or selling, or the real estate market in general, that's what we're here for. And also some random questions. So if you're dying to know what my favorite food is, or my favorite color, or where I went to school, you can definitely ask me that as well. I do also hope to have guests. So if there's somebody that you think would be a great guest, don't hesitate to reach out to me in regards to that. Keep in mind that I am not an accountant and I am not an attorney, so I cannot give tax advice and I cannot give legal advice. And also, if you are in a relationship already with an agent, an agency relationship, not a romantic relationship, if you have an agency relationship, meaning your house is listed for sale with another broker, or you have an existing buyer contract with an agent, I cannot give you specific advice to your situation because that would be violating our code of ethics. That would be interfering with another agent's relationship. So certainly I would never want to do that. So keep that in mind when you are thinking of your questions. But ultimately, I hope together that we can, build up our communities, answer questions that you have, and just have great discussion. So I'm really glad you're here with me today. And first question I've got is for buyers. So what is a buyer consultation and why should I have one? This is so important and one of my favorite things to do, one of my favorite things to talk about, because many buyers find their agent sort of accidentally. They call on a house and houses online are interesting and fun. And that's the part everybody wants to do. But the reality is if you choose your agent sort of accidentally because you called on a listing and then they said, hey, do you want to see some other houses? And you're like, well, sure. Yeah, I do. Right. You might get lucky and it might be a great fit and that's wonderful, but you might not, and it might not be the best fit for you, or it might not be the most qualified person, or whatever the case may be. I just always think it's good to go into it on purpose with intention, in any relationship that you have. So, when you are thinking about buying a house, and it can be, well in advance. I mean, I meet with buyers, a year or 6 months, sometimes 18 months in advance of them actually being ready to buy a house. So often what that looks like is they just have questions and they're not sure what to do. They're not sure how much money they are going to need, or how much notice to give their landlord, or what the process looks like, and all of those things, right? So I always encourage buyers or potential buyers, reach out. Like, I am always happy to answer questions. And often I will suggest that we start with a buyer consultation, even if we're not necessarily as far along the process as you think, would warrant that sort of thing. And it's because it gives us a chance to meet each other, to learn about each other, to see if it's a good fit, and for you to get your questions answered. Because the sooner you get your questions answered, like, often you need more information in order to know what your next step is or when your next step is. So I would recommend that you maybe interview a few agents and see who is the best fit for you, who seems to have the experience you're looking for. It works in the areas you're wanting to buy in, and then, set up a consultation with them. So what I do is I have potential buyers come in my office. Occasionally we'll meet at their, where they live or whatever, if my office isn't convenient for them. But we talk about what they're looking for in a property, if there are certain locations they need to have for work or school district, if there's certain number of bedrooms they need, all of those sort of logistical things. And it's important to keep in mind when you're thinking of that sort of thing. There's 3 things, kind of main categories when looking at property, and you can pick 2 and the market will determine the third. So it's property, place, and price. So you can say, I need to have a house in Peru School District. So that's place, right? The location. And you can say it has to have 3 bedrooms. Okay, you can determine those 2 factors, right? But the third one, the price, the market's going to determine that one. Or you can say, I'm not school district specific. I don't care where it is. I need to have 3 bedrooms and I need to have a house under $250,000. Okay, you can do that. And the market will determine the place, the third one. The market will determine where in the North Country you can buy a house at that price with those many bedrooms, right? So you have some say, but the market will dictate the rest. So those are important to know, what your needs are, what your wants are. And often, especially when there's two buyers involved, having that conversation with me helps them to really kind of explore what their wants and needs are. Sometimes they assume they have the same wants and needs, and they don't always, and that's okay. And sometimes, something might be on their need list. And as we kind of see what's out there, or they talk with their partner and with me about the market, they may say, okay, actually, I don't have to have a garage. If that could be added later, that works. So it's a good conversation to just kind of start. We also talk about the financing. Some buyers are cash, but that's pretty rare. So most of our buyers are looking to get a mortgage, and that's fine. So sometimes buyers will come to the buyer consultation and they'll say, oh, I've already talked to so-and-so. I'm getting a meeting with them to talk about mortgage options. That's wonderful. Sometimes buyers will come to the buyer consultation and they'll say, I haven't started anything. I don't know what to do. And I will give them some recommendations of lenders to call to get them started. We will also talk about, different different mortgage types and how that affects your purchase, because the more stringent the loan is on the borrower, the less stringent is it on a house. And the opposite is also true. So if you are pre-qualified for a conventional mortgage with 20% down, you have more options in terms of what type of house you can buy. You could buy a fixer-upper to some degree, and the lender would be okay with that. And that's because they're willing to take a little more risk on the house, because they're not taking a lot of risk on you. Because in order to qualify for a conventional mortgage with 20% down, you have to have a good credit score and solid income and low debt to income ratio and 20% down, right? So that's their risk on the borrower is pretty low. So like I said, the opposite is also true. So if you come to me and say, I talked to my lender and they said the only thing I can qualify for is USDA financing, which is up to 100% financed and allows for a little bit lower credit score. So the lender is taking a little more risk on you. They're taking a little more risk on the borrower. So they're not going to be as willing to take as much risk on the property. And that's because there's a higher chance that they are going to own it. There's a higher chance that it will be foreclosed upon. And so they're just trying to mitigate their risk, like everyone in the world. So in that situation, sometimes I'll have somebody that says, well, I have an FHA loan or a USDA loan, but I'm fine with a fixer upper. And that's a whole other topic. But the short version is your lender might not be. It depends what you mean by fixer upper, basically. Cosmetic updates, that's fine. They don't care about that. But, it has to have like some safety things. Well, all safety things essentially have to be fine. It can't need a new roof. There can't be chipping and peeling paint, that type of stuff. So that's a good conversation for us to have in a buyer consult, which translates to like just kind of giving you a little more information so that when you talk to your lender, when you talk to potential lenders, you can say, hey, Kira mentioned this. What do you think about that? Because from a seller's perspective, the most competitive offer is certainly cash, because there are the least amount of things that can go wrong in a cash offer, because there's the least amount of contingencies. There will just be home inspection and attorney approval, but there isn't an appraisal typically, although one can be added. And there isn't buyer financing in terms of like, what if they lose their job, or what if they get a giant truck payment, or what if they max out their credit cards, which could all affect their ability to get financing. And so that is just something that you're going to want to be aware of when you go get to like the making an offer process. So cash is king. That's what sellers want the most. Next best is conventional with 20% down, because that has the second least amount of hoops to jump through, meaning less chance of it falling apart. And then conventional with less than 20% down. And then, kind of your government loans, FHA, USDA, VA, all the acronyms are least appealing from a seller's perspective. Although they are great opportunities to get buyers into homes, and I certainly would not discourage you from using them. It's just important to know where the seller is coming from, what their perspective is, so that you can best negotiate and write your offer, etc. So once we talk about, what you're looking for, what you need, and what kind of financing you might be looking for, or giving you recommendations, then we go through the whole process of buying. It's kind of an overview because it's very overwhelming, especially if it's something you've never done before, or if it's something you haven't done in 20 years. A lot has changed. And honestly, you don't remember because if you're not doing this every day, you remember bits and pieces, but it's always good to have a refresher. So once you find a house that you like, we do a written offer. If your offer is accepted, there's a number of things to happen right away. You want to schedule your home inspection. In our market, buyers have 10 calendar days, not business days, to have their home inspection. As long as you have the inspection within the guidelines and you respond within the guidelines, you can walk away for any reason. So you can say, you know what, this is just more than I planned on. I'm out and I want my deposit back, and you can get it back. Also can say, this is exactly what I thought. No big surprises here. I'm moving forward as is. Or you can say, I still want the house, but this is a little bit more than I wanted to take on, or more than I knew was happening with it. I will move forward if I get a credit for this amount, or I will move forward if their seller fixes X, Y, and Z. So basically, it is often a new negotiation. One of the other contingencies that is immediate is the attorney review period. So in our market, it's 7 calendar days. And so typically that works out to be 5 business days, but not always when there's a holiday. So that just allows me to not practice law, which is very good because I am not an attorney. So basically, both parties sign the contract, and then both parties have the ability to have their attorney review it. So, it's a fill in the blank contract that was written by our board attorney. And so we fill in the blanks, both parties sign it once it's agreed upon, and then I, as your buyer's agent, for example, will send it to your attorney and your lender, and your attorney gets a chance to review it, make changes or recommendations based on the legality of it. And, after their conversation with you, based on what, if you have questions or you thought met something else or whatever the case may be, that's why we have them, which is wonderful. The other thing that happens right away is the deposit. So if your offer is accepted, we will be wanting that deposit check ASAP, because that shows the seller that you have some skin in the game, that you're serious about this and you're not going to just walk away from the contract. So those are the 3 things that happen right away. And then it's a bit of a lull. Your lender will be working on things, your attorney will be working on things. And the faster you get them what they need, the faster we will get to closing. But there's not a lot of immediate things for you to do because they're kind of working in the background, which is fine. And then your lender will order the appraisal. When there's a bank involved, there's an appraisal, and that is really to protect the bank. It protects their asset, which is the house that you will be buying and living in, but they're financing it. So it's their asset that they want to make sure that the amount they're lending for it is warranted based on the value. So the appraisal is done to determine that the value is there, that if you're paying $300,000 for a house, that it's worth that. And also, when it comes to some of the government loans, the appraisal is that fail safe to make sure it meets the safety standards. So sometimes when there's a government loan, the appraisal value may come back fine, but the appraiser may say, oh, the porch needs to be painted or there needs to be a railing added. So they may add some safety things that need to be done prior to closing. And almost always those do get worked out, just another kind of step in the process. So after the appraisal, then we wait for your lender to give clear to close, which is usually a couple weeks. So, a typical conventional closing, it's generally about 8 weeks to close. When it's a government loan, it's typically, I would say, 8 to 10 weeks. And a lot of that depends on how fast did the inspection happen? How fast did the appraisal get out there? How fast did the inspection get negotiated? Because basically all the parties are kind of waiting to do anything further until they know that buyer and seller are moving forward from the inspection, because they don't want to go way ahead in the process just to have everybody say, never mind, we're not buying this one. So that can play a factor in timeline is all. And then also, like, if there are banking holidays in there, it certainly can slow things down a little bit because people are off and whatever. So the overview discussion at the buyer consult often leaves buyers feeling overwhelmed and a little like, holy cow, that's a lot. But it's good because it's a good starting point. Oftentimes, if you haven't been through the process or haven't been through the process recently, you don't know the questions to have. You don't know enough to have questions almost. And so going over the process helps buyers think of their questions. It helps them go, wait a minute, you said the inspection, blah, blah, blah. Does the appraisal take that long? Or, it's really good to kind of help the buyer start thinking about the process and what questions they might have. Also, it's good for when we get to kind of those stages in the process, the buyer goes, oh, that's right. I remember you said something about when our offer is accepted, you're going to need a deposit and there's a couple other things we have to do. What are those again? So it's just the more times you hear something, the more it sinks in and the better questions you have. So don't expect to leave that appointment and go, well, now I've got this. We are good. That doesn't happen. What happens is you leave that appointment and go, holy cow, this is a lot. I want to make sure I have the right person guiding me through this, because that is really our role in so many ways, is to guide you through this process and help you avoid pitfalls when we can, but also just help you get through the challenges as they arise. Questions are always good. Lots and lots of questions. Text me questions, email me questions, call me with questions. I will never be upset or frustrated with somebody that has a lot of questions, because it really allows us to best help you. The more you ask questions, the more we get a sense of like where you're at with things, or maybe what your motivation in something is. Like if you're saying, why I have to move by December 1st, right? The more information you can give us, the better, because is it because your lease expires December 1st? Is it because you won't have any money and you're losing your job December 1st? Is it because whatever, there's a million possibilities. But the more information we know, the better we can assist you. And everything that you tell me as a buyer's agent is confidential for life. So we will become besties for a bit while we do this process. And the more information you're willing to share about why you need the size house you need, or why you need the size yard you need, or why you're wanting to purchase a house cheaper than you got pre-qualified for, or whatever the things are, the more you can give the why behind it, it allows us to best serve you. It allows us to, to do our job really, really well. You can feel confident in knowing that anything you tell me is confidential. It's for life. It's for my life, not even your life. So if you pass away, I still owe you confidentiality, which is pretty important to know. And it's also pretty important to know who I work for in a transaction. And that's something else that we go over in the buyer consultation. Is there's a number of disclosures that are there to protect the buyer. And one of those is the agency disclosure that talks about the agency relationship and who represents who, and how those different relationships work. You can see a house with a listing agent. They can represent the seller, not represent you. You can be their customer. They can walk you through their process, not advise you, but they can walk you through the process. And you will have never had buyer representation. And unfortunately, some people don't even know that that's happening. So it is important to have those conversations, because that person does not owe you confidentiality at all if they represent the seller. Just because an agent is writing an offer for you or walking you through the process does not necessarily mean that they represent you. So it is super important to have those conversations early and ask lots of questions. So after the buyer consultation, certainly I hope that you decide to work with me and we start the process, but there's no obligation. So if you decide, you know what, I don't think you're the right fit for me, that's absolutely fine. I would much rather know that after sitting with you for 30 minutes to an hour than showing you houses for 6 months, right? That's why it's so great to get all the information and see what's working and what isn't, and who is a good fit for you. One of the things that I've done in my career is I started a team so that we can give the best service that we can to our clients. and also be able to help more clients. So I now have 2 team members, and Samira and Nick. They're both a little bit newer agents, which is fine because they have, my 11 years experience and my broker's many decades of experience to help them out. So you get their availability, which is wonderful. But then you also have our assistants on the back end. And experience, which is wonderful. And they're just really great humans to work with. I think you'll love them. We actually went on a hike this fall. We were going to see this cabin that was on the property that we were listing for sale, and it was really warm. We're hiking up this mountain. We didn't quite know where we were going, and everybody was in such good spirits. The black flies were trying to eat us and carry us away. And then we finally get to the cabin. We're like, yay, we found it. We take some pictures, whatever, right? And then it starts pouring down rain on us. And it was really just, we were drenched and there's no hiding from it. We still had the whole way back down to find our way back and get out of there. But I don't remember if it was Sammy or Nick, but one of them was like, at least the black flies are not bothering us anymore. And I was like, that is the best attitude, right? These are the kind of people that I want to work with, that are looking for the positive in any situation. And they're the kind of people that I think you would want to work with too. So I am glad to have them on my team, and I'm glad to share them with you folks for sure. So if you have a real estate question, it can be about the market, it can be about buying or selling or anything, or a random question, please go on my website, which is KiraWitherwax.com. So KiraWitherwax.com. And shoot us your questions so that we can answer it on air. I would love to do that. And if there is a guest, like I said, that you think would be great to have on here, I'm very open to that as well. We would love to have some community members, maybe some real estate people in other markets, kind of give you a sense of what's going on in other places, but also the opportunity to build up our communities. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you will subscribe, and have a great day, everybody. Take care.